with the microphone and he was in the background. Did you ever see that show? That Drew about him through the jeans. This guy, he was in the microphone.
You guys are great.
Good.
Your hair is good.
He goes into the bathroom and finally admits
Her hair's fine.
and he's got his microphone.
Perfect.
Oh my god. That's his dad.
I wasn't joking about the sneezing thing. I did that the first one. I like almost blew everyone's eardrums out.
Sure, black dress. You all right, baby?
Got you. Couldn't turn left at that light, so I'm just sat there and then I'm going to turn and got here truck on track for like a minute. And then
You were in the truck?
no, on the bike.
Good.
Yeah. Truck, and it was just like spewing out heavy, dirty, and like running lights go green. Like, it's really.
I know. I was gonna. Ready? Am I starting on the inside? Far side? Which one? Did he say or it doesn't matter? Doesn't matter.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Nashville Entrepreneur Center. Is it anybody's first time being here today? Awesome. Well, freaking welcome. We love having you guys here. So the EC is basically a nonprofit resource center for entrepreneurs looking to get connected to resources and other individuals in this community to kind of help start their business. So if anyone is interested, we actually have an orientation this Thursday. It's at 9 a.m. and it's a really great way to hear about what we do at the EC. And it's also the first step in getting plugged in with our advisor program. So I just want to shout that out really quick. So Sip It is a community series that we have here at the EC that highlights kind of creative entrepreneurs and their stories. And so this year we partner with the Tennessean to put the series on. So thank you to one of our sponsors. And with Lily Hansen's book, Word of Mouth, Nashville Conversations. We're kind of each month taking an individual that she interviewed for that book and bringing them to the EC and hearing their story. Also, you can find that book in the back at Born in the Nash, which is a great company that sells really cool, awesome local products. And then also I want to thank you to our sponsors, Jumpfield Media, who are filming the event, running around with the cameras all the time, so watch out for them. And they'll be putting a clip on our YouTube channel after this event. So without further ado, I'll just kick it over to Lily to introduce our guests. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for coming this morning. I'm so excited to have Chandra on the right, Lee on the left, Watson here with us. They are owners of the event space, The Cordell, which is located right up on Rutledge Hill, about a couple of blocks away. And first and foremost, you two are singers and songwriters who spent 15 years on the West Coast in Silver Lake, Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to just kind of kick off. Normally I would ask how you two met, but obviously that's obvious.
In the womb. Very tight quarters. Got along really well and decided to create a friendship from there.
I wanted to talk a little bit about your upbringings. I know that you grew up in the South, Louisville, Kentucky, and wanted to know how the environment you grew up in shaped you as artists.
Yeah.
Do you want to go ahead?
She can't read my mind yet. We've got to get on the same page.
Still working on that one.
We grew up in Louisville, and I think probably the biggest thing, biggest way it affected us was actually going away from it, because I think leaving that town actually realized where we came from. So sometimes, I think when we're immersed in that culture, it's hard to see how it's affecting us. So when we went out to California, and I would walk down the street and people would say hi to, I would say hi to people and they wouldn't say hi back, or when I smiled at them, they would look at me like I was crazy. That's when I realized, wow, I came from a really different place. And so the South, I feel like growing up in Louisville gave us an atmosphere to kind of really embrace people. And so obviously now at the Cordell, that's a big part of what we do is host people. So it all kind of feeds in, but also at that point too, we were singing a lot in church. We've always been drawn to music and started, my mom says, singing together before we could actually talk. And actually speak words. We were singing in our own language. So it's been something that for us has been a part of us for a long time. And I think the South kind of, that amalgamation of the culture along with community and the church and everything kind of brought us into singing in a different way when we moved to California.
So Lee, I'm curious, why you two decided to move to Los Angeles initially, and I know that the area that you ended up in, Silver Lake, was kind of similar to East Nashville right now at this moment, where it was a really booming music scene. Beck was just coming onto the scene, Elliott Smith, a lot of people that ended up being incredibly famous. You were just kind of knocking around with, right?
Yeah, it was kind of a twist of fate. Actually, we packed up a truck and we drove around the country for like 5 months right before we moved, looking for a place. And we got back to Louisville and we wrote down 12 cities, and we were pros and cons. We're very analytical in that way. We're creatives, but we have to have a reason. And so we decided we were moving to New York City, and we were making preparations for that. We had an apartment there, and 3 days before we were leaving, they called us and told us they rented it to somebody for cash. And so we were just like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? And a friend in Los Angeles called and said, my roommates are moving out if you guys want to come this direction. And so we
Within
changed
3 days, we moved from one coast to the other.
the fastest move from New York to LA ever. And then, when we got there, we knew that we wanted to pursue music, but, we had a myriad of jobs. Being a musician is not necessarily the most, financially stable position to be in, especially in a large city like LA. But we just made our way, and we actually both ended up working at record labels, which was great, but also really depressing being a musician and working at a record label, because
Kind of takes the mystery out of things, You're like, oh, well, that's how they do
wait,
that.
I'm paying for the music video that costs $75,000? Okay, got it. Yeah, so we both learned just a ton, and our network just kept kind of spreading in that. And, we started a band there and really just started getting into the music scene in Silver Lake. And it was just a really beautiful, inspiring, sort of creative time in that neighborhood, because it was really, it was a new neighborhood, and it was definitely an area where musicians were moving because it was affordable. And now it's one of the top neighborhoods in the city. So it was time for us also to leave there when we moved here and be a part of another inspired community. And I think we had sort of felt like when we were there, we kind of had done what we came to do in LA, which was experience something completely opposite to where we grew up, and also to find ourselves in a way and understanding, what shaped us as youth, but also where we wanted to go as creatives and as people in the world. And so moving back to Nashville was, of course, a huge part of it was getting closer to our family, but also to be part of a smaller community where we could really have a business and have a future and know the people that we wanted to work with. So, and being that it was Music City, of course, it sort of balanced both of those things.
Absolutely. So the Watson twins have their own musical act, but they also have, definitely been backup singers for some of probably the biggest people in the industry: Jenny Lewis, Willie Nelson, The Shins, Death Cab for Cutie. I'm curious what your goal as backup singers is. I know that it's quite different being front and center, where you're the headliner, you're the main act, and you're complementing the actual musical act. So what was it like transitioning into that role?
Pretty easy, actually, because I think there's always been two of us. It's not that singular journey of an artist where you're like, I want to be on the front of that stage. It was like when I saw music in my life, I always saw this other person or multiple people. So it was kind of a natural progression. And also, we spent, years learning how to blend together. So when someone else came into the picture, it was like, oh yeah, we do our thing and blend with them, And I think it's really interesting being a backup singer, because you're complementing that lead, And sometimes backup singers forget that, and they want to put all these inflections, and they want to kind of shine in that moment. And I think a very powerful backup singer is someone who's actually complementing that lead versus saying, I'm going to try to make my mark in this moment too. So it's kind of, it's one of my favorite things to do. I actually prefer it versus singing lead, because for me, the blend of voices together is just really powerful. And it's also just, it's like acting, you're listening to that person and responding. A good actor knows how to be playing off of that person. A good singer knows how to play off the people that they're with. So we're constantly listening versus, it's not insular, it's this group experience. And so it definitely, for me, was a very natural progression. And I think for Lee and I, it's like we collectively feel like when we're singing backup for somebody, we're really focused on them and creating this, pad for them versus trying to shine individually.
Well, and I always thought it was interesting because I remember you were the first people that used the term famous adjacent, which I thought was really cute, where it was like, we're not in like the wealthy area, but we're living like, right next door.
Right next door,
yeah. Exactly. So you get
We're
to
good
be
at that, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. I was curious, like, when that began appealing to you, because I understand that coming from my role, interviewing people. I mean, it's, the attention is constantly being put on the other person, and I'm most comfortable in that role.
Yeah.
So when did you guys kind of figure out that that was your thing?
Well, our first band in LA was called Slidell, and it was this kind of, it formed with a guy who was, grew up in St. Louis and actually was in the Pentecostal church. So we kind of had these religious backgrounds, and then of course had moved to LA and experienced all this other crazy stuff. And when the three of us started singing together, we just clicked because we had all these gospel harmonies and we just knew where each other came from. So that was probably the first time where somebody had said, I want you to be in my band and I want you to be my backup singers. And we were like, okay, cool. So that started us on a trajectory in LA. For about 7 years we were in that band, and it's something that it's very obscure. I'm sure no one's heard of it, but it was a really great learning experience.
It almost felt like college. Like we both had degrees in art and acting, which was basically going to be unemployable once again. But this was like this was our grad program. Like we rehearsed 3 times. We were the hardest working band in show business out there. Like rehearsed 3 times a week, 4 hours every night, and all of us worked day jobs like 40 hours a week. So we were just scrambling to try and like get gigs, get people to shows, and
our biggest problem, we were a 7-piece band, which means you cannot tour if you're a struggling musician because you can't pay that much. It's like, yeah.
So, but that was, it gave us a real work ethic and also helped us to learn how to manage people and manage the finances. And, we were like printing our own CDs and really, we were trying to really make a go of it. But that was the first time that somebody sort of looked at us as backup singers. We took it seriously. We, dressed alike, and we went straight back to like the 60s kind of like real deal Supremes kind of feeling thing. And we started to get known for that. And so people started to ask us, because we weren't just, the girls in the back who just wore black and like didn't do anything, just kind of stood there and maybe like snapped their fingers. Like we were choreographed, and we took it seriously, and we kind of like took it to the next level. And so when that band broke up, Jenny was looking for some backup singers, and a friend, who was the lead singer in her band, Rilo Kiley Blake, he was like, you should call the Watson Twins. Their band just broke up. We're like, okay,
perfect timing.
Perfect timing, yeah. So we sat down with her and did a couple songs, and then that's really like, we actually, I feel like at that point moved out of our zip code, because she was already in a band that was touring and finding some regional success in the indie scene, and we made a record together, which actually we're touring this year, called Rabbit for Coat.
Right.
That is our 10-year anniversary tour this year. We did some dates earlier this year, and we're going to go back out on the road in September. So that record was just really well received, and I don't think we even really knew that was even a potential. Like, we've been working so hard trying to make something happen, and then all of a sudden we make this one record and we're on tour for a year straight, touring like all over the world, and to huge sold out audiences, and that kind of just started as, it just picked us from this like obscurity into like this other world.
And it really, I think that's kind of what I would say, and we've kind of talked about with Lily. Being a creative is something that, when you are a creative, it's really hard to find that direction, because we're constantly second guessing or saying, should we be doing this or should I do this project? The most success that we've had, and this also goes with our business here in Nashville, is these organic experiences that just happen to you. It comes to you versus you chasing it. And it's a really hard line because it doesn't mean that you can't rest on your laurels and you can't sit back and hope that it happens to you. But when we have been in the best places of our career, it's because this organic thing happened. Like when Jenny came over for the first time to play us songs, she walked over from a block away. We knew each other, but we didn't know at that moment that culmination was going to change our life. So it's those weird things where I think,
Did I mention I had quit music like 3 weeks before that? I was like, I'm giving up. I can't do it anymore. I'm just going to be a wardrobe stylist in LA because I knew I was making money doing that. And I was like, I can make a lot of money.
I'm sure every artist wants to quit like every other week, right?
Yeah, I was like, this is too hard. And then when that whole thing happened, I think sometimes you have to just throw up your hands and let your creative breathe. And in those moments of breath, sometimes you find the clarity to then come back to your art and fan that fire again, because it needs oxygen to continue to grow. And sometimes we're just so on top of it, we just are trying to do everything to make that happen.
Stranglehold,
Yeah, and we're really putting out the flame as opposed to letting it breathe and letting that back and forth really happen to make that fanning happen,
Absolutely. So I know a couple weeks ago when the three of us had coffee and we were talking about how you focusing on your business, your event space, the Cordell, actually allowed your artistic career to really flourish again in the last couple of years. When did you decide that you wanted to open an event space and why? I mean, I know that we've talked a lot about that it was a lifestyle choice.
Yeah. Well, I was actually getting married, and my husband and I had taken our first trip to Nashville.
Let's back it up even before that.
What?
Because we were in LA and we were kind of saying we wanted to move back to the South.
Yes.
So there was already a catalyst and kind of an idea in our heads that we were going to return closer to home and really set up shop
The first
somewhere.
business plan was a gallery because she was working at a photography gallery in LA and selling really high-end art. She said, oh, well, maybe we could do that in LA. So we put a business plan together for that.
We had like 5 different ideas. Let's put it that way. So over like 5 years, we had 5 different ideas, and every single time, because I think when you have an idea for a business, what we kept running into was like, but if we do this, we can't still do music, and if we do this, the business is going to suffer. So every single time we had this business model, we kept finding holes in it that were like, this isn't going to work for our lifestyle. And I think probably one of the things I learned from working for other people was I had to create a business that worked for me so that it still allowed me to be who I was and be a creative person while also paying my bills. So it was a very tricky kind of, there was a lot of concepts and ideas that we had, but we kept realizing that's not going to work for us.
Yeah.
And so it sort of led us to,
Yeah, we had all these business ideas, and then my husband and I visited here, and he's from England, but he really loved Nashville, and my family was close, and so we decided we wanted to get married here. And so we came and we were looking for a place, and every place they were like, oh, it's a year and a half before you can get a date, and we're like, this is crazy. Like, Nashville is going crazy. Like, you can't get a place to get married here. So my mom jokingly said, why don't you just build something?
and we laughed.
We laughed,
At
but
her.
we also knew what she meant. She meant buy a piece of property out in the country, put a tent on it for the weekend, and then you own that property, because all the event spaces were pretty expensive as well. And we really started doing our research, and we had a place in LA that we wanted to get married in, but we didn't want to get married in LA. We wanted to get married in Nashville. So we started sort of like really thinking about this, and Chan and I were kind of like, we were creating the idea, but it really didn't lock in until one of our best friends who we went to university with and we had known for 20 years, she stepped in and said, I'm from the South, I'm ready to move back as well. She was a filmmaker and actor in LA. And she said, I'm ready to go, and I want to be part of this business if you guys want me to be.
And
she was Neely,
who was our third business partner in the Cordell, and that actually just kind of sealed the deal. She comes from a family that are real estate developers, so she came with like a lot of experience on her end as far as mentors. And
which is something, again, going back to the EC, we've come here. I mean, that's what I love about Nashville and just generally people in the South. I'm like, no one would give you any information in LA. If you even ask them a question, they'd be, threatened by you. And so that's the thing I love about Nashville. We came here with an idea and started talking to people, and people just opened their arms and said, how can we help you?
yeah,
From the mayor's office to community leaders to local businesses. And that's something that, it continues to amaze me in this town. And that's why, again, a perfect storm. We moved here 3 years ago. So Nashville was just starting to hint at what we see now, which is crazy explosion, And so we had no idea that it was going to develop in this way that quickly. So there was a lot of things, again, stars aligned, if you want to call it, or the universe, whatever. There was a lot of things at play, and Neely was one of those. She made us, although we were dabbling in a business plan, it was kind of like, okay, there's 3 of us, and that seemed also more doable, to be honest, for us, because we knew that we needed another person when we're on the road. So
Yeah.
how does that work as we're developing our business? And same goes for her. She's in Spain right now. Good for her. It's like we all wanted to be able to continue to have our lives and inspiration in our lives. And so again, it was that kind of perfect storm of people and sort of the trajectory of these guys getting married and all that kind of led us to this business model that if you had told me 6 years ago you're going to run an event space in Nashville, Tennessee, I would have been like, you're crazy. That's never going to happen. I don't even know anything about an event space,
Which is one thing I think is really important because, I have this conversation a lot with, people my age in their, late 20s, early 30s, where you work all these, odd jobs as you're growing up. And I know me, I've done, 12 years in the service industry. You guys would joke, we are touring musicians / caterers.
Caterers, yeah.
So, a lot of people think, God, I really don't want to be doing this. I want to be doing my art. But those jobs obviously are what were sort of informal training for you to do what you do now at the Cordell, right?
yeah. And I think also being a musician, like you're constantly marketing yourself. Like your job is to write music and to play music, but you're also trying to sell why people should listen to you and really be genuine, be real, connect with your people. And I think, we did that for, 15 years in LA, and that genuineness is important to us. And that's really when we created the Cordell, we wanted it to be authentic, we wanted it to be genuine, and we wanted it to be us. And we had to understand that regardless of what our competition was, and there's a lot of amazing event spaces in town, but we weren't trying to be them. We were trying to be us.
Yeah.
And we had to be not threatened by them and not fearful that we weren't going to do something that was right. We had to just trust that we were doing something that was real to us, and that Nashville being the way that it is, that authenticity would translate and people would be drawn to it.
But
And-
back to your point, Lily, though, it is things like, when we were designing, because the loose story of the Cordell is we bought a condemned building up on Lindsley, renovated and restored it, took off the back wall, added this additional square footage. So when we were designing the building, we met with a ton of caterers, and also I had been a caterer. So I'm like, okay, I don't want stairs. They have to have a place for this to plug in. You've got to have X, Y, and Z. So, when we're concepting the building, we're not just thinking about it from the perspective of it's got to be really pretty and it's got to look good in pictures. It was like, okay,
Has to
from a
function.
service perspective, a happy vendor is a happy client. I know that because I've been the unhappy vendor going,
The caterer
yeah,
in the garage
in
with
the
no
garage
running water
with
and
running
no air
water,
conditioning.
yeah, or electricity, carrying dishes up, grass stairs. So, so when you've been that person, it's really easy to know that that's an important integral part in my business is all these other businesses, So I want them to be able to be in an environment that they can thrive in as well, And so all of those things definitely went into us looking at the business not as just owners or people that were concepting the business. And I think that's also why it worked, was like why this concept worked was because we had experience in all these other areas. So we were kind of bringing, I sold high-end art, so now I do sales for the Cordell, which is, I think, a piece of art. It's a beautiful building that was created from passion and creativity, and because of that, I don't have a trouble selling it to people because I believe in it. You know, I believe in the choices that were made, and I believe it's a product that's worth it. You know,
I think that's like in any small business. You have to believe in what you're selling. You have to believe in that,
even if it's a great idea and everyone's like, you can make $1 million off of this.
Yes.
If you don't care, no one else is going to
hot
care.
dog milkshakes. We got to believe in it. You know what I mean? Like it's like something like that. Like you got to buy into it, but you also have to know that you're being honest with yourself about what you're selling. And I think if you, even if you're working for somebody, I think it's such an important part of finding happiness in your life, and it makes you work that much harder. And that's something now, you know, we've been in business at the Cordell for 2 years. We have a staff. We really try to encourage the growth of our employees, and we want them to believe in it too. Like, it's not like we're running a cult or anything, but we do feel like
If anyone wants to sign up later, we're taking new members.
exactly. You know, I feel like that's a really important aspect when you're running a business is, you know, you are the boss, but you also want to have a team that has that same belief and has those same sort of like,
And we really try to,
you know,
we really try to balance even with our employees, because I think that's the other thing that's important is like, I was an employee my whole life. So from the time I was 14, I was working for other people. So now I'm flipped in the other position where I'm like, now I'm the boss. Okay, what does that look like? And I think of that when we make decisions and policies for our employees. I think about that. You know, I want them to have a life.
oh, we
I
can't
want
do that.
them,
They're going to be pissed about that.
yeah. You know, or just I want them to have a creative experience, and I also know this isn't the end of the road for them. I hope it's not. You know, I hope they go on to do more amazing things and that they really search for their dreams. So it's not, we've all worked for those people where we feel like they really just want us in that position because it's easier for them. Being an employee for my whole career until now, well, besides music stuff, but working for other people taught me that I really want to be a boss that also thinks from the employee standpoint, is not always thinking of the bottom line or thinking of what my main goal is. And I think that creates that type of excitement for them about our business, and also just their loyalty to us, because they know we're real with them. You know, it's like we're really trying to do things and implement policies and procedures. I mean, we laugh about it all the time. We're like, I don't know how we made it through the first year. Mm-hmm. I mean, we had, you know.
Very renegade.
Yeah, I mean, like this morning, last night, one of our air conditioning units went out.
We did a church service last night. We have a photo
photo
shoot
shoot
starting
today.
this morning at 7:30. So we've got a window of like 7.5 hours to get an AC fixed because it's 100 degrees outside.
Yeah.
And you guys still showed up early today, which is very impressive.
But you know, it's one of those things, like we surrounded ourselves with professionals. We said, okay, we're learning, so we have to create this safety net around us. And that is maybe paying a little bit more for the warranty so that guy, he has to come.
Yeah.
He's got 10 hours to respond to my call. Ensuring that we were going to be taken care of, and we picked our battles on that. You know, we knew that there were some things like, I used a Squarespace and made the website. You can do that, you know, and now we see it. Everybody
This is
uses
our Lee Watson web designer. Just kidding.
Oh my gosh, I almost killed myself in making that website. Like, I'm not a technical person, but I knew that we needed to save $3,000 to do something else, and we had to put that money elsewhere. So we all took on jobs and took on learning things. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm the CMO. I have no, beyond marketing a band, I have no real training in that, but
Somebody
again,
has to do it.
Somebody has to do it. Chandra's the sales. Salesperson, we had to have somebody who was running the sales department. And our other business partner, Neely's our CFO. We honestly took on these roles because the bank made us have roles in our business plan. And that business plan, once we made that business plan, we were like, we have to stick to this. Mm-hmm. Because we owe the bank a lot of money now. And if we don't hold up our roles, we could get in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
You know, so it was like,
And it
really
also
had
helped
to-
us, you know, defining those roles really helped us to stay in our lane, if you want to say it that way. You know, it's like when you're three creatives starting a creative business, there's a lot of passion and a lot of emotion, you know, and
You want your
that
hand
can
in
be
everything.
And that can be about paint colors. You know, it can be about a faucet. It can be about the weirdest things that you're like, I would never care about that in a million years. when it's yours, you care, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, we had to create parameters for each business owner to say, this is your lane, stay in it. It doesn't mean I'm not going to ask you a question and say, hey, what do you think about this? Or let's brainstorm this. It just means at the end of the day, it was that partner's responsibility to take care of it. When we dictate that and we say, this is your responsibility, that person can invest more. They can be more, you know, committed to that position and in charge of it. Yeah, and that's a really important lesson that we learned really early on, because we're like, okay, we're all doing everyone's job. How is this going to work? You know, we're working 80 hours a week. This is unsustainable, you know? And so when we really went back to our business plan and our positions, we started to divide the roles accordingly. All of a sudden it made sense. And then it was like, okay, now we're really starting to manage ourselves in the business in a way that is manageable, you know?
And I think you never really know the level of commitment starting a business. No. I mean, it is, I mean, for us, I can only say like it took years off of our lives in certain ways. Like for that first year, I mean, it was 80 to 100 hours a week, not sleeping, not going anywhere. We were fully committed to making sure that it happened.
One of our clients is here, and we were just reminiscing about, she got married about a year and a half ago, and we were reminiscing about, you know, when we first started selling our building, we only had half of a building. And we had this lookbook, and it was January 3 years ago, so it was like literally like the coldest January on record in Nashville. And we were hosting walkthroughs. I mean, people must have thought we were insane.
People and their parents to put on hard hats and be like, just walk really carefully because there's ice everywhere, you know,
inside the building, you know, and people. I remember the first couple I walked through the space, and literally we had the back wall of the old building was torn off. We had no roof on the back half. The subfloor was covered in ice. And I was walking them through, and I was showing them our inspiration board. This is what this is going to be, and this is the color, and da-da-da-da-da. And we finished the walkthrough, and they looked at us, and they were like, okay, we want to put down a deposit. And I was like, great.
I'm not sure how we do that.
No, I didn't even say that. I was like, oh, that's amazing. I was like, I'll get back to you guys on that, and we'll get it, you know, we'll go ahead and, you know, I'll send you an email about where to send it. And I literally got finished with the walkthrough. I called Neely and Lee, and I was like, somebody wants to give us money. What do I do? You know, but that was, we weren't, you know, again, we were learning as we were going, you know, so it was like, we weren't even asking for deposits yet. We were just trying to show people the space, but the excitement was, I was excited about it, and they felt that, you know, they felt that the choices were something that I believed in, and therefore they believed in, you know, and that was kind of the moment where I realized, okay, I think we're going to be okay. You know, the minute somebody's like trying to pay you and you're not asking for it, I'm like, okay, I think we're going to be all right.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's, you know, again, that's part of this whole journey has been kind of amazing in that way, is just that creativity and feeling that inspiration, and then that translating to clients, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm just going to ask one last question, and we'll turn it over to the audience for Q&A. But you two have the kind of unusual benefit and predicament of running your business sometimes from the road, you know, and it's interesting because I've been reading this book called The Art of Nonconformity, and this gentleman talks about literally running his business while he's traveling the world, and he hits every country, you know, on the globe. So what is the biggest benefit of that, and what is also most difficult about, you know, running a business from your laptop or cell phone?
Yeah, I think, I mean, for the first year and a half, 2 years, we really couldn't leave too much. I mean, it was a newborn baby. We were very protective of it first and foremost, but also like it needed a lot of attention. And in this last year, we've just been able to like bring on staff and stuff like that, and we've been able to bring on great people. And luckily for us, we have the World Wide Web. So we can do a lot of stuff on the internet, and
Thank you, Google.
Yeah, so I think that, you know, it's technology is a beautiful thing in that way, but also when you're trying to be creative and you're on the road and you're out until 2 o'clock in the morning playing a show, and then you get up at 8 a.m. because you're on the West Coast and it's already 11 here on the East Coast, or 10 at Central. you're always still connected to it. And I think that, when we go on the road, we basically get up at 7:38, we work for the first 4 hours of the day, we go to sound check, and then we check emails again, and then we get dressed, and then we play a show. So it's really, we can't, there would be no way for us to sustain that on like a long-term basis, but it's great for us because now we do mostly like session work here in town, or we're playing a local gig, or we're just going out for one night or 2 nights. I think that for us, it makes me appreciate the piece of being in Nashville and having a business that I really care about and love. And then when I go on the road, I appreciate what that does for my creative, because I come back here and I'm inspired.
Yeah.
I'm inspired to work with clients. I'm inspired to share my business again. And I think they really help balance me personally. And I think it's important to, again, if you're concepting a business or a startup, that's what we kept coming back to, was like, how can we put ourselves in a position that we can still do what we love? So even, I wish that people would give up the notion that, and I think that there's this, especially in music and art, there's this ego that's like, if I have to do another job, I didn't make it. I just don't think that model exists anymore, because I think the business itself doesn't sustain that. So art is a very difficult business to be in and actually make money at. So if we can relinquish that idea of, to be an artist, I can't have a job, and if I have a job, that means I'm not successful. I wish that artists would look at it more as like, that other business just has to work with what I already do. And if they work together, then yes, you can be inspired by both. I'm inspired by what I see at the Cordell and how we work with people and how people respond to the building, and also just that stability is really inspiring. That stability to know that, because after 20 years of not knowing where your next paycheck was coming, it was we were ready
stranglehold,
to just say like, we're willing to take this risk in starting a new business, to know that it's us.
Yeah.
We create whether or not that happens. We're not waiting to be hired by another band, or waiting to get an opening act on a tour, or waiting to get a tour, or waiting for a record label to give us money to make a record. It was just, you're constantly just scrambling. And this was something that was brick and mortar. It was there. I can go and look at it and be like, okay, I'm proud of this. This is real. This exists. And I think we are very, very fortunate that Nashville just exploded right when we opened, and we have now a great network of people here in Nashville, but we also have people from New York and Chicago and LA and San Francisco now that are coming and doing events at our space. And I think that is just going to keep breathing life into the city and keep making more amazing things happen. And if you are thinking about starting a business, we got so fortunate to be here during that time, but you guys are here during that time too. And it still is happening, and it's still a great, encouraging city. And if you really, the fact you can call the mayor's office and somebody will call you back or pick up that phone, is a city that cares, and a city that's really trying to make a name for itself. And so I think it's really encouraging to be here right now.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And
Thanks,
one of the
Lily.
coolest stories that, the twins ever told me was that, they opened the Cordell and kind of sort of put music on pause for a second, and then, before you know it, you're on The Tonight Show with CeeLo Green. So there you go.
Weird things happen. Yeah. That was through Facebook, by the way. Got a Facebook message, hey, you want to sing with CeeLo Green on The Tonight Show? I was like, is this a prank? I was like, one of our friends is totally messing with us, because this cannot. And they left a number, and we called it, and sure enough. And then a week later, we were on The Tonight Show.
Yeah. Weirder things have happened.
Yeah.
Well, we have about 15 minutes left. Does anyone in the audience have any questions? Yeah.
This is a real quick three-part. One is explain how you got the name. Two is, will the Cordell have siblings? Is there reporting like, oh, this is B and C?
Yeah.
And three is, how do you manage managing what you created and still create?
Yeah. Well, the name, you mean the Cordell, not the Watson twins, right?
Sounds a little self-explanatory.
Okay, I was just checking. I was like, well, our last name's Watson, and we're twins. The Cordell, actually based on, we did a lot of historic
I was in the historic, like the library here.
Green Hills Library.
In Nashville, because that building actually dates back to 1887, our building does. So we kind of always felt like the building was going to be a historical name, whether that was a tenant that had lived in the house. And so when we started looking through, I went through the census and looked at all the people who lived at that address. And they all just had really bad names. So I was like, well, there goes that idea out the door. And so, this was after hours of researching, I mean, giant plats, in the library and all this stuff. Also, the library was very helpful. And finally, I get to this guy, and I was looking, actually, then I started looking at the careers and jobs of all the people who lived in the house. So in the census, it would say their name and what they did. And one of the original tenants worked on a steamboat. And so that got me thinking, oh, well, we're right by the river. This area was big for the steamboat culture because all the wealthy merchants basically lived up here on the hill.
Yeah. So like down where Ascend is, that was Black Bottom. That was where the tent villages were, where immigrants stayed. And they would carry all the goods
Unload
off
the boats.
of the boats up here to the trolley barns, and then they would go on to trains
Right where
and
we are.
service the surrounding areas.
Yeah.
So this whole area basically started Nashville, and our house is one of the first residential area of downtown Nashville. So there was a lot of historic and surrounding the steamboat culture.
So that got me looking into the steamboat culture in terms used. The cordel is the rope on the front of the boat that pulls it to shore and pulls it through low water. So we like this idea of the rope. Typically ropes have 3 strands, so there was 3 partners.
We saw this diagram. It said the cordel, and it had 3 fibers coming together to make one stronghold. And we thought, well, we're the cordel.
Yeah.
It's the 3 of us.
And then, of course, the symbolism of tying the knot, the rope that brought people to the shores of Nashville, which we were people coming to the shores of Nashville. So it had a lot of
symbolism for us. And then, cordel 1, 2, 3. I think that it's hard. There will definitely never be another cordel, but there may, at some point, we love what we do. I think for all of us, again, our business partner is a filmmaker and avid traveler and photographer, and we make music, and maybe if we can find time to do it, we would. And if there was the right property, for us, it's a real passionate thing. And so we even, we had a contractor approach us about a historic property. That is more where we lean, is rehabilitation of a historic property, saving a historic property in Nashville, because the face of Nashville is changing so much. Those are really the things that spark and ignite us, and we're always have one eye open for some project like that, for sure.
And then managing versus managing creative.
Not musically. How does continue to grow? Will you add aspects to it? Or?
Yeah. So we've continued to. We're always brainstorming. We've learned actually over the last few years that we have to do an owners meeting and an employee meeting once a week, typically is how we do it. Well, we actually do owners every other week, and then weekly we meet with our staff. And that's really just to get on the same page, whether that's talking about the crazy thing that happened at the event on Saturday, or here are the issues, the things that need to be fixed, to how was your date with that guy last night. So it's just reconnecting with everybody. And then also, really, again, involving them in the management of the business. So they feel invested, their feedback's important. And so when we check in weekly, really gives us, and the owners are there. It's not like, okay, the manager meets with these 2 people and the owners are just kind of like, okay, we're at our houses having coffee. It's like, we're there every week, And so we continue to be really involved with our team. And as far as growing the business, what we learned is that, so we purchased our property and we started a business. So we have basically 2 investments. So the property itself, as you know, with any property, there's just a ton of maintenance. So we're consistently painting and upgrading this, and that doesn't work, and we need to switch out this, and changing the furnishings. And so we're constantly kind of reinventing the space in those ways of just keeping it fresh. There's nothing worse than walking into a venue that you want to get married and it smells like beer. So, we really we're constantly trying to keep that fresh and new. And then also within the business, looking for new revenue streams, really focusing on marketing, focusing on different kinds of events we can host in the space. We're predominantly a wedding venue, but I was just saying, like 2 weeks ago, we had 6 events in 7 days. We did a billboard photo shoot, we did a TPAC luncheon, we did another independent portrait shoot, and then we had 3 weddings. So it's like, that's what 1 week can look like for us, and that keeps it inspired and creative, because we're like, oh wow, how did these people use the space, or just working with them, you know?
We have a different business model too, because we sell an empty space. We don't provide anything. We have a furnished loft. Please check out the website, and if you feel inspired, if you'd like to come by for a tour, I'd be happy to host anybody. But we sell an empty space, and also we allow open vendor policy, which means as long as the vendor's licensed and insured, they can work in our space. That gives our client ultimate flexibility to really make their event their own, and that was something that was important to me as a client, and the transparency. So we offer a price, and that is the price. There's no markup, surcharges, or fees, which that's where a lot of venues make their money. And so we had to just put a sticker price on it and be cool with that and be like, you know what, people may look at that and they may say that's too expensive. And we say, go do your homework and make sure you see how many different charges are coming in, and what the taxes are, and what your caterer is going to charge you for this, and all this stuff. And when you really look at that, we are a mid-priced venue here in town. We are not an expensive venue. We aren't a low-priced venue, but we're right there in the middle, and that's the type of environment we offer. We offer an environment that is simple. It functions alone. You don't have to bring in a ton of stuff to make it work, but it has a vibe. It is the historic property, but it is this big white space that is just light and open and brings the outside in with all these garden windows and all this stuff. So for us, that was the inspiration to start. Now we are doing weddings, but when you do weddings, that's a finite Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So you only have those 52 weekends in a year that you can actually book. So then you got to figure out, how do I book Monday through Thursday? And that's really where our inspiration, our creative, it's constantly trying to get excited. How do we get into those people? How do we get them excited about this space? Because we want to activate them, and we want the corporate client. We want the film and video shoots and that kind of stuff. And so that's been interesting. And too, coming from the music business, we want music in there. You know, that's what gets us excited when we see live music in there and it sounds amazing. And we know that we thought about that. Oh, we put acoustic foam in the ceiling because we wanted bands to sound good in here. We knew we were trying to think of all of these things so that became a home for a lot of creative energy. And it sounds hokey, but like, that building had a life way before us. And as a lot of developers would say, and as Neely's dad said to us, we bought good real estate because it had a lot of great bones to it, and we just had to accentuate that. And if you're gonna buy a property, you know, parking, of course, and all those stuff, but like those little nuances that make it really specific and individual to you, that is what gets us excited every day. I love walking into that space. We've owned it for 3 years, and I remember when we left Nashville, and we were trying to decide if we were going to buy this condemned building that had a hole in the roof and had been sitting vacant for 5 years, and everyone thought we were insane. And I said, if somebody buys this building tomorrow, I'm going to be so upset. I think I don't know if I'll ever recover from it. And we made an offer on it the next day. So I think those type of things like that, it's hard for us, and so it's easy for us to get excited and inspired and talk to you guys about it today.
We have time for one last question, and then I think the ladies will be hanging around for a couple minutes afterwards if anyone has a pressing thought. So anyone else? Yes?
Yeah, I don't know how I even found you guys. I've been drawn to you though for some reason. I've purchased tickets at City Winery a while ago, and I've passed you on the street, and I've actually worked in your building.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and I know you guys together, and just through all of that, and I respect your hustle prior. I know the hustle for sure. But just like going back to identity, have you guys ever been like Lee Watson, and like have you guys ever been apart? Is it always been
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. We do.
Should I tell the story about our 3 months of individuality? Well, it was the summer that OJ was on the run.
No, we haven't, honestly, it's interesting because
It's kind of, let me just say this first. It's weird because I think a lot of times people look at twins a lot of times and they're like, oh, they're inseparable. It's weirdly like, it'd be like having a built-in best friend and being like, I can't like you because you're built in. So it's this weird thing of like trying to reject something that's just so natural, and like I don't understand when twins don't like each other. I think that's the weirdest thing ever. You were created together so that you just have, there's already just in your makeup, there's a connection. And so when we went to college, I remember my mom was like, well, we were talking about should we room with other people or whatever. And honestly, a lot of it came down to practicality, which was like, well, my mom's gonna have to buy 2 of everything, 2 microwaves, 2 refrigerators, and also, what if we don't like our roommate? So we were like, let's just room together. Like that solves the problem. So a lot of times I feel like
It's out of necessity, like,
it just, yeah.
even like on the road, like we would go on tour and we would tell people, oh, we'll share a hotel room. Because we're just trying to stoke out that band and be like, you don't have to get a
Save
suit.
$100
We're like calling each other from room to room, like, what are you wearing tonight? I want to make sure I don't have the same outfit on, you know? Like
I did text her this morning to make sure she wasn't wearing this necklace.
It
So
happens. It happens. But, you know, I feel like for us, when you have a business partner who is a best friend, it's like we can be in a mad, crazy fight, screaming at each other, and 5 minutes later we're laughing. And knowing that we have that understanding with each other, it just kind of has been like, she also has my back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And vice versa. And so I feel
and also
like
the flip side to that too, which is being a twin is like also you never think of yourself as I don't
know what it's like to be not a twin.
Yeah.
And
So for me, I am an individual, if that makes sense. And people who know us are like, David would agree to this. We're very different people. Lee's husband's here, so I'm like, he would agree that we're very different people. We are simpatico in a lot of ways, and we work well together. But we are very much individuals, and you know that I think also saves us. It's like, you know, when people talk about marrying their best friend or whatever, when you have that connection with somebody, there has to be enough differences that you don't hate each other. You know, so. Our personalities just work together, and I don't know if that's something that just happened over time or if we were born that way. But yeah, for me, I feel like I am an individual, even though, you know, I'm half of the
like,
Watson twins.
Our growing up, like we grew up with a single mom, so we had to rely on each other a lot. You know, I mean, that was where we came together and said, we got to figure out how to make this work. And so we started working together at a very early age in making things happen for us, you know, and I feel like, yeah, it's hard to say, like we did one twin audition when we were in LA. We weren't like, we weren't pursuing that at all, but somebody's like,
We're terrible twins.
Yeah. So they were like, you need to wear the same thing. And we're like,
We don't even have the same thing.
we don't own the same outfit.
I'm like, well, I have those black pants and you have those. I guess they're
So we
close
went-
enough.
we
But we
went.
walked in and people were wearing the exact same outfit.
And they were fixing each other's hair, and we were like, oh my God, this is totally not
We're
us.
like, we
twins
gotta
are
get
so
out of
weird.
here.
Twins are weird. We got to get out of here. And so, you know, it is one of those things where like you don't realize like how weird you are or how unique that is until you see it from the other side. And that particular day, I was like, wow, twins are really kind of a weird thing. And
Yeah.
I guess I never think of it because I am a twin, and I feel fortunate that I've gotten to do all these awesome things with my sister and best friend. So.
That's why I asked if you guys both, you can see like you stand alone very well in pairs.
Well, we were saying that last night. We're doing a Linda Ronstadt tribute night, you guys. Selfless promotion tonight
Tonight
at the
at the
Basement
Basement
East. But it's literally like some of the most amazing singer-songwriter ladies in Nashville, and it's all Linda covers. It's going to be phenomenal. The band is sick, of course. Music City, thank you. But you know, we're doing this song on our own, but we're singing the entire song together. But also, like, we blend really well together. Even though our voices are different, we blend really well together, and that's why we became backup singers, is because of that blend. And we're not necessarily like the best singers, and we're not gonna like be the next Adele or anything like that, but we sing with passion in our hearts, and we're not trained singers, but we love singing together. And so anyways,
Come out tonight.
yes, come see us. Yeah, it'll be fun. We're only one song. You'll get your socks knocked off
Yeah.
from everyone else, though.
Everyone else is amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for
Yeah,
joining
thank
us,
you guys.
ladies.
Thanks for coming and
It's
getting
a real
up early.
pleasure.
Yeah.
And
Thank you, Lily.
yeah, you all can follow them on social media. It's thecordell.com is the website. And then next month we'll have Miranda Whitcomb-Ponce, who is a restaurateur in town. She's the founder of Burger Up and the Frothy Monkey. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming. It's great. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joanna. I'm a Vanderbilt junior.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm actually, we're co-founding a program called Vanderbilt Women in Business, and we have a mentorship program. It's like to network and for the undergraduate women. And I was wondering, are you possibly interested in a mentorship opportunity? So we have 2 semesters. You guys come and there's a networking event with the undergraduates. If you want, I can give you more information over coffee.
Let me give you my card.
Okay.
And send me some information, and then let's meet up and talk about it. I'd love that. No, I'm just kidding.
Take it home.
I know. I'm taking this with me. It's a souvenir, right?
Hey, I mean, it's a nice souvenir. Thank
you.